Okay, well, let's get started, shall we? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jan Griffiths. I'm the president and founder of Gravitas Detroit, and I believe that there's a better way to work. There's a better way to lead. I believe that we need to break the mold of corporate leadership and allow our natural leadership talent to shine through. I believe that we need to lead in line with our values and show up at work as who we are, as a real person. Imagine that. I've been in the corporate world for over 30 years. I grew up on a farm in Wales and I came over to this country when I was 23 years of age. And I'm going to share with you a quick little video that will tell you a little bit about me and, more importantly, what I believe in. So here we go. I'm a rebellious, passionate farmer's daughter from Wales, and I'm committed to transforming the way we work. I came to Detroit many years ago and worked my way up the corporate ladder to become one of the top 100 leading women in the automotive industry. I learned how to assimilate into different corporate cultures, to be what they wanted me to be, to fit their mold. I felt if I wanted to be successful, I had to act a certain way, look a certain way. Everyone in the corporate world knows exactly what I'm talking about. That feeling that you have to mask certain parts of yourself in order to please someone else, that you live in fear of judgment, in fear of not being liked, even the fear of being fired. In that culture, you may learn to survive, but you will never thrive. Enter the world of authentic leadership. Authentic leaders know who they are. They live and lead in line with their values. They're comfortable in their own skin. When they speak, you listen. They attract the very best talent around the world and they empower them to do their very best work. They create an environment for people to thrive. Gravitas is the hallmark of authentic leadership. Your quest for gravitas starts with an understanding of authentic leadership. What is it all about? I've taken all of my experience and lessons learned to curate the 21 traits of authentic leadership. I've created a series of tools, really pathways to engage in deeper conversation about authentic leadership. These are ways for us to tap into that deep, innate human desire to connect with each other at a human-to-human level. Gravitas Detroit empowers you. Gravitas shatters the mold of corporate leadership to allow authentic leadership to shine through. It creates an environment where people can thrive, where people are inspired. They're galvanized around the mission. I'm Jan Griffiths. Join me on your quest for gravitas. During my time in the corporate world, I was great at figuring out what companies wanted from me. I knew exactly how I had to behave. And just as the video says, I knew exactly how to fit that mold. And I became what they wanted me to be. I'm not going to say that I completely lost myself in the process, but you learn to mask certain parts of yourself. And that's why I like that in the part of the video where you see everybody looking the same, the cookie cutter approach coming off the conveyor belt, because I felt like there was this mold that I had to fit. And I saw leaders above me that were successful by fitting this mold. And let me tell you a little bit more about what this mold is. Have you ever been in a meeting with somebody and the corporate culture is one where you make yourself look good by making other people feel bad? Has anybody ever felt that way? Tell me in the chat, have you ever worked in A corporate culture, just give me a yes or a no, or maybe you haven't worked in it, you've seen it or experienced it, either a yes or a no, where success is shown by how bad you can make your peers look. You make yourself look good by making others look bad. And if you can find dirty laundry to put on the table about your colleagues, that's what you do to make yourself look good. And that's not you personally. It's just a culture. Yes, I can see that many of you have experienced that culture. And it's awful, right? It's just awful. And we waste so much time and energy when we do things like that. And I'll give you another example of this mold. A lot of my experience is in supply chain and purchasing. And I remember many, many years ago, right when we started to have commodity increases, there was a huge increase coming on resins, going back quite a few years. And really, the industry at the time, I was in the automotive industry, the industry wasn't used to those kinds of commodity increases. And I was told in no uncertain terms to go beat up the supplier. Now, for those of you who know me, you'll know that, yes, I can be very direct, but I will never be disrespectful. I am not somebody who's going to yell and scream, and I'm certainly not going to take a baseball bat to somebody, to a supplier who's coming in with a price increase. But there was this expectation that I had to have this tough, mean, aggressive style and persona. And that's how I would be seen as being successful in my function. And so what I did was, at the time, it was a major resin manufacturer, a global resin manufacturer. And I knew that it was not about accepting or not accepting a price increase. It was about how much you were going to accept and when, and then to assure continuity of supply. And if there's anything we've learned lately with the chip shortage, it's the relationships and making sure that we've got continuity of supply is really important. So I chose to have those supplier meetings off-site in a restaurant. What? Who does that, right? Because I knew that if I'd had those meetings in the office and I couldn't be heard yelling and screaming at the supplier, then I would not be considered that I was actually doing my job. So I had to completely mask my style and my negotiation strategy because it didn't fit the mold. And that was many, many years ago. And I thought, this doesn't feel right. Why is it that I'm supposed to be this tough person yelling and screaming at people and suppliers to gain respect as a leader? Because I never felt like it really worked. I thought that it alienated people more than it brought people in to me. And as leaders, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring people into us so that together we can achieve the mission, the goal, the vision, and the purpose. And I just felt like it never worked for me. And then in my last corporate job, I finally got to the point where I started to move away from fitting a mold that somebody else wanted me to fit. And I started practicing authentic leadership. I didn't know that that's what it was at the time. I simply started to lead in line with my values and doing what I thought and I felt was right, not what other people or even an entire industry was putting out there as the mold or the type of leadership style that I should have. And you know what? The results were better. So this idea of command and control and being the tough guy it got some results, but very short term. But leading more authentically, I found personally a much more rewarding experience when you can inspire a whole group of people to be with you on that mission, on that journey. It's much more rewarding. And they give you more of themselves. And they feel good about their work, about what they're doing. And they will absolutely go through walls for you. That, to me, is what leadership is about. So you're all here for a reason today. You're here because something about authentic leadership resonates with you. So tell me what that is, please. Why are you here today? Put it in the chat. Something about authentic leadership resonates with you. Maybe you followed us on the 21 days of authentic leadership and that piqued your interest. More confidence in what I've defined as authentic to myself. Yes, yes. Looking for different ways to communicate. Yes. How to execute. Yes. Learn to communicate like a leader. Yes. More comfortable in executing decisions. Yep. How can I lead without changing myself? There it is. That's beautiful. Well, the good news is you can. You can lead and you can be yourself. And I'm going to put a poll up for right now because there are people who believe that the way that we've been leading, no matter what industry you're in the past, is okay. And it works for them and it's worked for other people in their company and they've seen people be successful. And then there are people who believe that we've got to transform the way that we lead and the way that we work because we've had this huge wake-up call with the pandemic. The pandemic has absolutely ripped apart the fabric of normality and it's shaken us to our very core. And we know that there's this huge change that's happening, this massive transformation. We stand right at the precipice of this enormous transformation. And we're saying to ourselves, but what do I do? What does leadership look like and feel like? So I would like to know, I'm going to put a poll up here, if you believe that we need to transform or if we don't. And there's no judgment here. It's okay if you don't. So my question is this: do we need to transform the way that we lead? Or do you think the way that we've been doing it is okay? I want to know if you believe transformation is needed. And it's okay if maybe you think it's not, and it's okay. No judgment from me ever. Yes, I think most of us believe. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. Most of us believe that yes, this is a time for transformation. And I see a question coming from Jackie, curious on the views of authentic leadership and how it helps the traditional industry to the transition to new mobility and post-COVID. Okay, so one of the things about authentic leadership, we know that we have to change the way that we lead. And there's a number of reasons why. And the first one I'm going to share with you is a Gallup poll. According to Gallup, only 1 in 3 people are fully engaged at work. 1 in 3. Wow. You know, if that was a piece of equipment on the shop floor, we'd be going out of our minds. But think of it this way, right? If only 1 in 3 people are fully engaged, and I would hazard a guess that that number is even lower in the automotive industry. Imagine if you could engage, inspire, and motivate every single person to their maximum potential on your team. Imagine if you could do that. Imagine what you could achieve. And there's a bottom line impact. If you look at the Gallup poll, companies with engaged teams experience 81% reduction in absenteeism, which might not be so much of a factor now that we're working from home, but a 43% reduction in turnover and a 23% increase in productivity. There it is. And the turnover number is particularly significant right now because we've got the Great Resignation going on. We've got people really, truly reevaluating their value system and who they are and saying, you know what, I don't want to work like this anymore. I don't like my boss. I don't like the company. I don't feel valued. I don't feel like I'm being challenged. There's more that I could do. And so I'm going somewhere else. So we've got the Great Resignation going on. And then let's talk about Gen Z. Now, Gen Z, we talk a lot about millennials. Forget millennials. well, not really, don't forget them, but millennials are already in the workforce. Our future is in the hands of the tail end of the millennial generation, the Gen Z. Gen Z is coming into the workforce right now. And I have just published a podcast interview with two Gen Z members who have graduated college and they've been in the workforce about a year. And it's really fascinating to understand what they want from leadership. And I can assure you from all the research I've done and the people I've talked to, they will not tolerate the command and control model and the way in which we have led in the past. So I think it's fair to say there are many reasons out there as to why we need to transform and why we need to embrace authentic leadership. So, okay, but what is it? What is this thing, authentic leadership? And Jackie, going back to your question about traditional auto going into the new world of mobility, I've had a fascinating discussion just recently with Stefan Kraus, who was the former CEO of Canoe, previously at Faraday. And we go deep into that particular subject and why authentic leadership is the way of the future, is the way that many EV companies operate. And that episode actually releases on Thursday morning. So that should answer a lot of your questions. I love this picture, because this is what we're trying to do, right? We want everybody to feel this way, to bring all this discretionary energy to the work, to feel inspired, motivated. And we've got to, in order to do this, we have to banish fear from the workplace. We have to trust each other. We have to have transparency. So many different aspects of authentic leadership we need to make leadership work in the future. And I told you, a few years ago, I didn't really know what authentic leadership was. I was doing it, I was practicing it, but it didn't have a tag or a label. And then when I made the decision to leave my corporate job and start my own business, I realized that there was this thing called authentic leadership, and it really resonated with me. But then I realized that we needed more definition, more structure around it again. I mean, what is it? And so I worked to define 21 traits of authentic leaders. And if you followed us on the 21 days of authentic leadership, you'll know what they are. And don't worry, I've got a summary document for you. You'll get it right after the webinar. And it goes into all the different traits that we need. It's not a perfect list, but I will tell you that if we all were able to practice all 21 traits, we would have an incredibly powerful leadership model. And as with anything else, and I'm going to go through a very quick overview of those 21 traits in just a moment, but as is with any process or with any initiative, really, it's got to be some type of process, right? And really it starts with you, with your mindset. And that's why I asked you about whether or not you thought that there was transformation happening and that we needed to change, that we needed to transform. Because if your head isn't in the right place, if you don't think that we need to change, then none of this is going to work and it's pointless. You've got to believe it deep down. You've got to have this bone deep commitment that something has to change in leadership. Then step 2 is you've got to gain the knowledge, right? You got to gain the knowledge. And I will say that I have learned more about leadership since I left my corporate job 3 years ago than I did maybe in 30 years in the corporate world. I probably learned a lot about how not to do it in the corporate world, but I have been interviewing some amazing, authentic leaders on the podcast, Finding Gravitas. And the purpose of the podcast is to get authentic leaders talking about what this thing is. What is authentic leadership? But more importantly, how do you practice it? And I like to switch up the guests because, yes, I want a lot of successful people on there because I want other people to hear that it's okay to lead this way. You can lead this way. You can be successful leading this way. But then I also have some other guests, subject matter experts, to bring a different perspective. I've had a couple of Navy SEALs on the podcast and a Gen Z interview just to bring some different perspectives in. But you as a leader, you have to gain all this knowledge. And I have learned so much. My mission is to cram all this knowledge into a small space and deliver it to you. That's what I'm trying to do. And once you get the knowledge, if you have a workshop or a leadership coach, that's one thing. But here's the problem with that. When you have a workshop or a coach, it's just you or a small group of people. What about everybody else on the team? And that's one of the things that I found a little bit frustrating when I was in my corporate role is, okay, so you could hire a leadership coach for a few people, maybe that director level or first management level leadership, depending on where you are in the organization. Well, and that's great if they get it, but what about everybody else? How do you get this information out into the hands of everybody else? And this dilemma has been bothering me for a while. And then somebody said to me, they loved the 21 traits document. They loved the idea that there was a framework and a structure to it. And they said, you should make this an online course. And I thought, oh, okay. Do people really do online courses? Well, I guess they do. And I guess they're powerful. And they're even more powerful when they're combined with some targeted workshops. So I believe the process to get to gravitas being the hallmark of authentic leadership, is first and foremost getting your mind in the right place, that you want to embrace authentic leadership, that you want to do something different, that you're committed to gaining the knowledge, not only from me, but from a number of different sources, that you're prepared to commit to expand that knowledge to your team. And then, one of the things that I don't like is I don't like cookie cutter approach to anything ever, never have, never will. Then you need something that's broad enough for everybody, but that you can have the ability to focus in certain areas that are important to you. Because not every company is the same, not every function is the same, and not every team is the same. And then you celebrate success. And that's what we've been able to do. And before I go into this, I would like to ask you a mindset question. So here's a poll on mindset. Where is your mindset right now? Are you good? No changes needed in your leadership model? You all right? Or you need to do something and you just started to think about it? Or you're ready to go and embrace authentic leadership right now? So either you're good, you're all right, or you need to do something, but just not sure what, or yes, you're ready to go. Again, no judgment. Either answer is fine. What's great about this poll is that everybody knows that there's something. They need to do something. And that's wonderful, because that's half the battle. It really does start with mindset and being comfortable enough in your own skin and who you are to say, I know we need to change. I know we need to do something different. I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to find them. That's a huge step forward. Great. Okay. So I'm going to go back and share this. All right. I'm telling you a little bit about this process that I went through here. So I took the 21 traits and I said, okay, how do we make this so that people can use this with their teams in a way that didn't bore people senseless, that didn't put people in front of computer screens for hours on end, that gave people enough of knowledge, but knowledge that they could use with each other, with their team. Because it's no good, I didn't want people to have an online course and go, okay, I got it, I'm good. And then forget it, right? So I looked at these 21 traits and I divided them into 5 different modules. And I created an online course that goes through each one of these sessions. So there's 4 sessions in each module. And each session has a video from me explaining the topic, a little bit of maybe a personal story about it, explaining what it is, why we need it. Each session has some additional resources, other podcasts where you can go deeper into the subject if you want to. And I grouped them together into these modules so that at the end of the 4 sessions, you can get together with your team, and there's a workbook that goes along with this, and it's editable. So it's a fillable PDF that you can keep on your computer screen and just type into it. It wasn't always that way. It was a workbook that you printed off, but you'll know that I love black and red, and people were not happy about the fact that it sucked all the blank ink out of their home printers. So we've learned a lesson. We're always learning. We're always getting better. So these 5 modules, and there is a Gravitas module that comes right at the very end. And what it does is it gives you a language to speak with your teams. So when you talk about I'm gonna pick on accountability because that came up in the chat earlier, right? About accountability. I used to think that accountability was a bad word, and I used to think that accountability is when somebody's poking you in the eye going, I'm going to hold you accountable for these numbers, and if you don't make these metrics, I'm going to fire you, right? That's accountability sort of gave me a shiver. But I have learned that accountability is actually a good word. And if you look at the middle of that word is the word count. And accountability simply means I want to be able to count on you. If you talk about accountability for something that's happened in the past, it's probably blame, and that's not good. If you want to talk about accountability for something in the future, that's when it can be more of a positive sense of driving the need for something to happen. But in order for people to feel ownership and to feel that accountability, they've got to understand why they're doing things. What's the vision? Are you the leader that's able to get out of the weeds and formulate a vision, which of course is session 1 in module 1? You can't do module 3, session 3 until you do module 1, session 1, because you've got to have an idea of what the vision is. So it leads you through this process. And then if we talk about module 3 as a team, you can get together and talk about these things. And there's an action that I encourage you to take after each one of these sessions, both a personal action and a team action. So you can get together with your teams and you can talk through all of this. And one thing that we've learned is that when I say teamwork at the end of each module, it's easy for me to jump in front of a group of people and say, let's have a workshop. Let's talk about these things. I realize that not everybody's comfortable doing that. So we have now developed a team workshop guide and agenda. So if you're the team leader, we've got you. We got you covered. We've got the agenda. We've got the topics. We've got exercises. It's all in there. And I have to tell you, the feedback has been tremendous. We've got a team of 40 people coming up close to the end of this right now. And so far, I've heard testimonials that say things like, what did she say? She said, you made my life bigger and better. Wow, really? Because this is touching personal issues as well as professional issues. It's touching how you show up as a human being in the workplace. And as authentic leaders today, it's about how you connect to that human. It is not about a cookie cutter approach to leadership anymore. It's about being yourself, and it's about connecting with your team. All of this is all designed online. And right after you finish one module, the next module opens up. So it's small, bite-sized bits of information that you do on your schedule. So you could do module 1 in a week, in a month, whatever you wanted to do. It's all self-paced. And then we have it designed so that you have a certificate at the end, because we all need to feel that sense of accomplishment. This gives you that framework to imagine having a discussion with your team about accountability. What does accountability mean? What does it mean to every single person on your team? Are you good at it? Are you bad? What about trust? These subjects are often sidelined. We don't want to go there. And if we do, we want some specialist to come in and train us, and that costs an absolute fortune. No, there's an easier way. I've taken all of my knowledge and experience and crammed it into this course. And these videos are pretty painless to watch. I will admit they run anywhere from 5 minutes to, I think the longest one is 10 minutes. And then after you go through this session, with your team, you may decide, hey, you know what? Trust is a big issue. Then you go into step number 4, where you have more of a focused session in that particular area, because 21 traits is a lot. That's a lot of ground to cover. And I'm not going to assume that I know your team. And again, I do not like a cookie cutter approach to anything. So you decide where you need to go deep, drill down deep. And you'll all have the same understanding of these 21 traits. Instead of it being a word, because accountability, again, I'll pick on accountability. It means different things to different people. You've got to get that common understanding so that you can connect and then propel the team forward. And that's what authentic leadership is all about. Some people have said to me, that's great, but we're up to our eyeballs right now. We've got a crisis at every turn. We got chip issues. We got supply chain issues. This is the worst possible time to do this. Maybe. I would argue that it's quite possibly the best time to start it, because you'll start to engage people. And when module 1, session 1 is vision. And it's don't think that you have to come to the table with this perfectly articulated, corporate vision statement. That's not what this is. This is about you and your team talking about a vision, a future state that you want to be in, and making it your own, and then galvanizing your team around that vision. That's what this is. It's a very simple framework to allow you to be successful so that you can be that authentic leader. So what do you do now? Well, you can sign up right now. I've kept the price point really low because to me, it's about getting the message out. This is not about some high-priced, high-fancy workshop, which I have done, but this is about getting the information out into your hands so that you can transform the way you lead and the way that you work. That's what this is all about. So with that, I want to open this up, and the QR code will give you access to the sign up, and also I think Abby's going to put it in the chat. But I would love to see what's going on in the chat right now. Please comment on male views of leadership and expectations. Oh, it just jumped. Leaders sometimes will adopt their leader's style, which may not be evolved. How do you lead up? Oh, I love that question, Drew. That's a great one. I wouldn't say I've always been in that situation, but I've been in that situation where my leadership style is vastly different to the leader that I have worked for. And one thing I've learned is that it's really hard to change the person above you. If not impossible, right? It's probably not going to happen. But what you cannot control the actions of others. You can control yourself and how you choose to lead your team. And that's what I chose to do. Throughout my career, it's a muscle, and I got stronger and stronger. The more I did it, the more I believed in it, the more results I got, the better I got, the stronger I got. So you have to be you. You have to control you and lead the way you want to lead. Otherwise, you'll end up being like me. You'll be 30, 33, 34 years in a corporate world, assimilating into what other people wanted me to be. And it took me until I was in my 50s before I really said, enough of the mold. This is what I believe. This is how we need to lead. And this is the way forward. Okay, let's see. And you know, Drew, you said people adopt the leadership style. It's natural for people to do that too sometimes, because if you see that that's how you're successful, then you'll emulate the style of your leader. And that's my fear right now, is that that won't happen in the future, because Gen Z won't operate under command and control. They will not. It just will not happen. So the time for the change is right now. And there's a comment on the male views of leadership and expectation and what makes good leadership behaviors. Did I read that right? Male views of leadership. I think that there is a tendency for, I mean, obviously, you know, gender discussions are very sensitive these days, but I will say that the male leaders tend to be more focused on the black and the white. And, you know, we've all got male and female tendencies in our brains. We do. And the male brain was very much win, lose, black and white, whereas females tend to be more working into the gray area and more on the emotional intelligence side. And that's not to say that male leaders don't have that, not at all. But I will say that the female leadership traits, those nurturing leadership traits, seem to be more in line with authentic leadership. Although, you know, I have to catch myself as I'm saying that. I wish you could hear a couple of the interviews, podcast interviews that I have just finished. And they'll be coming out in the next few weeks. The one I mentioned earlier, Stefan Kraus. Stefan worked for BMW. He had a senior level role in BMW in Europe. He was also the CFO of Deutsche Bank. And I assumed that he was going to be an awful, awful guy. I thought he was going to be aggressive and nasty. And I'm not telling you anything that I didn't tell him. I talk about it on the podcast. And I couldn't be more wrong. He is such a wonderful example of an authentic leader. So, you know, the gender discussion, yeah, there are tendencies there, but it's not an absolute. But I really love that podcast episode. Okay, let's see, what else? Can I repeat what I just said about Gen Z not doing something? Yeah, they are not going to work for command and control type leadership model. They absolutely will not. They want to work for a company that has a mission. They want to know that the company has a brand, that there's a value system that resonates with them. They want to be treated with respect. They want to be seen as equals. So this idea of a hierarchy and driving accountability by telling people what to do, that's not going to work. We have to inspire people from within. And that's much more difficult than coming up with some metrics and smart goals and telling people, you know, do this or else. That leadership model is gone. There is a way to drive accountability. There is a positive way. We are all capable of doing this. It takes, you've got to be so comfortable in your own skin to step out there and do something that's perhaps different to what's going on around you. But when you do it, and you do it a little bit at a time, I just interviewed Rich Sheridan, the author of Joy, Inc., and he talks about run the experiment. And you've got to run the experiment. You got to show vulnerability is a trait of an authentic leader. Be vulnerable, put yourself out there and try it and see what happens. I am here to help you. And I am going to keep creating content and delivering courses and podcasts and everything, because this is who I am. This is what I believe in. Let me take another couple of comments from the chat. interesting thought, considering the world continues to operate on a patriarchal and hierarchical structure. Yeah, you're absolutely right, but that is changing. And if it doesn't change, I firmly believe that companies are not going to survive. They just will not have a future. The companies of the future, people have a choice right now as to where they want to work. And Gen Z is not going to work for a company with a strong hierarchical structure and command and control. It's not going to happen. So I believe the time is now. I believe that authentic leadership is the way of the future. And I have seen, success story after success story. I interview all these people on my podcast. I am here to help you through this. Feel free. You can call me at any time. Check out the course. Try it out for yourself. Try it out for your team. It's working. We're getting lots of great feedback. And I wish you all the best on your journey and success in your quest for your gravitas. Thank you.